Welcome to episode 215 on April 12th, 2021. I know the date because it's my dog's birthday. Gareth Wheeler alongside Terry Dunfield with you. This is Come On Your Reds, your Toronto FC podcast. On today's episode, Armas and TFC flex in Mex. It took me all of 2 minutes to come up with that rhyme, by the way. An injury for every day of the week in the team and next week as well. Home away from home in the second leg of the Concacaf Champions League. And the 26th season of Major League Soccer kicks off this weekend. 26 years of Major League Soccer, Terry. Where were you 26 years ago? Can you remember that far back?
I was just about to head over to England to start the journey. I was playing rugby for Lord Byng in Vancouver when I wasn't supposed to. And I actually got a concussion in my first game. And I'm like, that's why you're not supposed to play.
Well, it explains a lot about what's happened since. I never knew that you played rugby. I love rugby too. I just don't see you as a rugby player.
Well, what are you trying to say?
Well,
I need some size.
No, just some toughness overall.
I thought Johnny Wilkinson, when he kicked that drop goal, was amazing. That was something special. I was hooked from there.
You were in the UK at that time, right? So
yeah, I was going nuts. I went and bought a rugby ball and tried drop goals. By the way, those are hard.
Yeah, very difficult. We'll have Come On You Rugby on a different podcast. Restock's birthday. There's this fish and chip store down the street from me. It's called Reliable Fish and Chips on Queen Street East. And they make these phenomenal dog treats out of fish. So I'm going to go get her some and bring her out. It's raining today, so it's not really her day. She can roll around in the mud or do whatever she wants because it's her birthday. Six today. Terry, let's dive right into it. A 1-1 draw in the first game of the season, the first game under Chris Armas, and the first leg of two in this round of 16 in the Concacaf Champions League. It's a draw that feels like a win, even this many days after. TFC coming away with all important away goal as well. But I think it's the way they competed, the commitment behind that performance that kind of stands out the most and really gets Toronto FC off to a good start to this 2021 season.
Yeah, I think you nailed it there, the word commitment. And sometimes when you go back and watch a video or the game, you're like, maybe we didn't play that great or it wasn't as good as what we first thought. And to be honest, nothing's changed. I think you saw a committed group of players that have bought into what Chris Armas is selling. When it got hard in the second half, sometimes you'll see players kind of do their own thing or go back to their ways. I didn't see any of that. And I think before you can really build something special, there's got to be trust and belief. And I would say on the back of a very good performance against reigning MLS champions, the Columbus Crew, in that preseason game, we're starting to build trust and belief as a group. And I think you saw that afterwards in the changing room when Chris Armas came in and just said, boys, on to the next game. Well done. Let's roll. And let's take this point.
Leon scored their goal in the 25th minute. What a goal it was by Navarro on the volley. An unstoppable shot, really. Sometimes you just need to tip your cap. That was one of those moments. And Toronto FC getting the goal in the 50th minute. It came courtesy of Erickson Gallardo, but it was really courtesy of the Toronto FC press. Mascara put the ball back into his own net. I've watched back that Toronto FC equalizer so many times, and I just hear Chris Armas' voice in my ear talking about press, counter press. Because when that ball got played to the left back into CO for Leon, who's not actually their natural left back, as Oswaldo Rodriguez was injured for the game, Erickson was pressing, but it was 4v5 in terms of Leon players in that area and Toronto FC players in that area. As we saw so many times in that game, Michael Bradley stepped forward into the play, forcing a mistake. And by virtue of the pressure, the ball ends up in the back of the Leon goal. So I think that although people are saying, it's a fortunate bounce, TFC got lucky, there was method behind the madness. And I love the way that they stuck with their principles throughout the game for the full 90 minutes, Terry.
Well described, and well described on your game call. It was like Chris Armas was in your head. It was implicit, your call. The press is coming, and here comes the press.
Is that what I said?
It was better than that, but it was, I think his methodology is in our heads right now. And as you said, Michael set it off. Gallardo picks a pocket to Sio, who's very comfortable on the ball. And, I think he steps at the right time, and fair play to Gallardo to play such a positive pass. I think since he's been here, he might be a little bit safe. He might get caught in two minds and maybe take a step with the ball and see what develops. He tries that, I guess, that key assist to try to get in behind Leon. And TFC are fortunate. They get a little bit of luck, but that's still in the 49th minute. They still had a long way to go to really take that away goal and the point. Just going back to that first goal and really looking at it, I think that's a tidy up area for TFC. That I think you have to respect how good Leon are in one-on-one situations, and Meneses kind of squares up Richie Larea, and TFC just get caught ball watching ever so slightly. And as Meneses kind of cuts back on it, I think that's where the lines now need to just step a little bit. They don't shift. And just looking at Bono on that one, it's interesting. He goes with his left hand up above rather than fully reaching out with his right. I know you can get your left hand there quicker, and by no means am I a goalkeeper expert, but he doesn't really take a big step across, and he doesn't miss it by a ton. I know it's the first game of the season, but I bet mid-season Alex saves that one.
Right. It doesn't take away, though, from how good that strike actually was. Come on. Like, I love how that we're the nitpicking stage already, because quite frankly, that's what will be reviewed by the team post-match as well. These will be the lessons that are taught. I was thinking the same thing, maybe a little bit loose in terms of your marking on a player right on top of the 18, but it's ridiculous for Meneses to just scoop the ball up and Navarro open up his body and put it far post on the volley with purpose. It was a good mix of power and precision, Terry. So, although we can nitpick a little bit, I mean, that is still a ridiculous strike.
It is. And his positioning in that triangle of Noble, Ralph, and Michael, he's like right in the middle of that Bermuda triangle. And just that technique is ridiculous.
Think about that. Navarro has 3 caps for Mexico. The guy is ridiculous. How is that guy isn't in the Mexican national team setup on a regular basis? I simply don't get it. This was a very good Leon side. Obviously, we documented it heading into the first match. This team won the Mexican League as well as the playoffs in December. They've struggled a little bit more in the second half, the clausura part of this Mexican season, the second half of the year, as they divide their year into 2 seasons. But they won 3 games on the trot coming in. They were without their captain, Luis Montes, who was suspended for the game. We spoke about him last week. It came as a little bit of a surprise that he was out, and without their left back. But by comparison, Toronto FC had a laundry list of players that weren't available. I'll run through some of them. Westberg, Pozuelo, Osorio, Mavinga, Moro, Dunn, De Leon, Akinola, Achara, Endo. Need I keep going? And again, I had Armas in my ear saying no excuses whatsoever. Well, no excuses whatsoever. Noble Okello playing maybe a little bit of an unfamiliar role for him. Marky Delgado playing a little bit out of position on the right. But overall, Terry, from minute 1, Toronto FC set out to attack. This wasn't just a team that was sitting back parking the bus. 30 seconds in the game, Schaffelberg down the left, whipped into a ball to Josie Altidore, put an attempt on target. So I thought that, that kind of sent a message from the first whistle. And it took Leon a while to kind of come to grips with how Toronto FC wanted to set out and play.
Yeah, it probably didn't go as expected as maybe we thought. I expected Leon to be on the front foot, to get right into a rhythm. They're 13 games into their season, and it didn't start like that. It was TFC that were on the front foot and probably create the best chance of the game in the first 30 seconds. And it comes from a turnover in the middle of the field. The ball goes out wide. And I think that's one. It was a difficult header for Josie to get a ton of power behind, but it's maybe one he'd like back. And those fine margins, your timing is some of the stuff that takes 5 or 6 games to really nail. But that's an action straight off the training ground. It's a great ball from Schaffelberg. And I think it's a credit too to TFC's system that it works, and that at times they played spoilers. And if I watched Lyon play Atlas this weekend, they won 3-1. They were comfortable, and again, they started off on the front foot. They were all over Atlas in the first 5-10 minutes, and that wasn't the case against TFC.
You oftentimes look at the game in a much different way than a lot of other people will, based upon your playing career, because of your coaching acumen as well. What were your biggest takeaways from Toronto FC in this 1-1 draw?
I think no excuse. Culture was important. I think it would have been easy for players to go there, and right from the start, that mindset was right. I thought, from the players available, Chris Armas put together a pretty solid team where, for the most part, guys were playing in their own positions. They were comfortable. There was this little bit of a pull on the team where Markey and Michael kept kind of coming into the middle, kept coming left, which at times left Richie a little bit isolated. And looking at the passing matrix, TFC actually came out on the left a lot more than they did on the right. But big picture, I was comfortable if I'm Chris Armas. I thought for the first 20 minutes, TFC looked in control. I felt like they didn't crumble when they conceded a world-class goal. And coming into halftime, I'm somewhat confident. Having said all that, I think that they spent a ton of energy, TFC, and subs are going to be needed in the second half. And we didn't quite get out of there with a clean bill of health.
We'll get to the injuries in a moment. I had the debate this week on One Soccer Today with a colleague of mine, Oliver Platt, whether it was a lucky draw for Toronto FC or not. And I'm steadfast that it wasn't lucky, Terry, because Toronto FC came out and played the way that they wanted to play and made life as difficult as possible on Lyon. Yes, over the course of 90 plus minutes in any game of football, you're going to ride your luck at times. I think that each and every team has those moments. There was a number of close calls where Lyon could have put the ball into the back of the net. Mena on the far post. Campbell went off the post as well. Campbell, right at the end of the first half, missed a chance, swing and a miss on the far post as well. But that's football for you. I was more kind of stating that it wasn't lucky based upon the way, kind of the balance of the play before the last 15, 20 minutes when Toronto FC were forced to go deep into their bench, make multiple forced changes and give some playing time to very inexperienced players where you kind of had to hold on in the end. But overall, I have a hard time characterizing the performance as lucky when so much was put into it and they really weren't played off the field. I just thought that this was the design of the match. And like I said, the draw was just as good as a win heading home for the second leg, where now Lyon has to come out and score in that game. Yeah,
and Lyon rested their whole team. Only 3 players played on the weekend, and I think that's a respect to TFC. I agree with you. I don't think it was lucky. I think the word context comes to mind, and it's tough. It's a tough game for your first game of the season. Altitude, heat, missing a ton of players. So I think if you take all those variables into consideration, there was no luck whatsoever. And you know, if you go a little bit deeper into some of the stats, Lyon had 18 shots to TFC's 5. Just 4 of those shots were from around the kind of penalty box, the 6-yard box. And I thought TFC protected their goal extremely well. So I'm okay with that. I think there's some areas that TFC can grow for sure. Their passing accuracy wasn't super high. It was only 66%. And I thought we gave the ball away a couple of times that we didn't have to. And just connecting those first couple of passes in transition are going to be important. And they can lead to us now being able to catch our breath or us being able to hurt Lyon in that second leg.
Context is the right word. You don't have the MLS MVP in your team. You don't have Osorio, who's an automatic starter for this group. Chris Mavinga, you'd think would be a starting center back as well. So context, and, you said it. Since his November 24th, when Toronto FC played their last game, Club Lyon has played 19 competitive games over the course of that span.
That's nuts. And then you look at the chemistry piece too. This 11's never played together. And your time, we saw it with Liam try to find a pass out wide, and he was on a different page, and that leads to an opportunity from Leon. So I think the chemistry piece is an important one as well. And I think if we dive a little bit deeper into some individual performances,
yeah, that's where I want to go next.
Yes, some of the guys absolutely crushed it.
Go ahead. Who do you want to start off with? Who immediately comes to mind, Terry?
Yeah, I think if we kind of go through the team, let's start up top with Josie. And I thought you saw a player there with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, a player thriving in a leadership role. I thought the pictures were clear for him, where he knew where to be. I thought it was selfless at times. And I think that's even epitomized with how he comes off. He was actually tracking back, covering for Schaffelberg.
Yeah, I was just going to build off that. He looked fit. He looked lighter. These are all positives. Unfortunately, we don't have an injury update as of right now. Hopefully there will be something before Wednesday night's game, but it's being kind of treated like NHL hockey playoff time, where everyone has a lower body injury and everyone can play in any game. It's kind of these sorts of gamesmanship that's going on right now. But I think there was a lot of positive about the way that he led the line, and with pacier players around him, i.e. Schaffelberg playing down that left-hand side, who I think has a real chance to go on and claim that position for himself. I just think it provided a little bit more balance and complements what Josie's, what his job is to do playing that position.
For sure. Presence. And I think he brings us goals. If you look at our front unit, there's not a ton of goals in there. And I think Josie is going to be so important. He brings goals. He's got the quality to score against Leon. Thought Kello was outstanding. Wheels had a couple of nice moments. By no means was a liability on the pitch. I thought his role, and he stuck to his task and what he was asked to do. I thought he was a nice shield in front of Michael and Ralph, and Michael was outstanding. I thought he covered a ton of ground. I think that, it was funny. I was thinking about it over the weekend. I wonder if he's going to turn into a little bit what Atiba Hutchinson is at Besiktas now, playing a little bit higher up the field. It'll take him a few games to kind of find his rhythm and, switch into that attacking mindset where he can create half a yard or look for that slip pass. We saw him shoot from distance, but I thought it was a good start for him.
90th minute, he was still pressing forward on top of the Leon box.
That's a sticking to our identity. That's a huge plus for Chris Armas.
The midfield's loaded with players, but Michael Bradley is once again going to be the most important one. We used to do on this podcast Top Red of the Week. I'd give it to Michael Bradley. He's a player, and I don't quite understand it. Our friends south of the border, I don't think that they appreciate Bradley, what he's meant for the national team and what he's meant at club level for each and every team that he's played for over the course of his career. And when you see these MLSsoccer.com top 5 central midfield players, top 5 sixes, last year he wasn't even in the conversation. It's like, how isn't he in the conversation? Now he's healthy. He looks much healthier, Terry, dealing with 2 injuries last season, which certainly played a role. But what I'm interested in is this new role for Bradley, him kind of pushing forward and maybe playing that Atiba role. Because the last few years, he has held back. He's almost sat deep and played almost like a quarterback going forward, and defensively as a shield in front of the front two, where they will split and the fullbacks moved up the field. I much prefer this Michael Bradley, whose energy, whose ability to read the game plays a much more significant role in the way that TFC plays.
Yeah, I think this is why TFC bought Michael initially from Roma, was for him to be that attacking midfielder. And I think he spent a lot of his energy under Greg Vanney helping, as you said, the team build. And, his role was to get the ball to Victor Vasquez or Jonathan Osorio facing forward, and then they'd find Jabinko or Josie or Aya, whoever it might be. And I think this will be engaging for him. It's a nice new challenge, and I think he's got the toolkit to not only create opportunities higher up the pitch, but I think he can also close people down and be clever with that and turn the ball over in good areas. If I'm going to give a top red, I think it's one of our 2 center backs, man. I'm sorry to go against you. I thought fine. Omar was outstanding. He looked 5 years younger. All that hard work in the offseason paid dividends for sure. I loved his work when he was kind of defending out wide and in wide areas. He was okay to leave his box, and he was a man mountain in the box. But my top red goes to Zavaleta, and what a great story. He was on the outside looking in. He continued to trust in the process. It would have been easy for him to look for a move away this offseason. Ali re-signed him, and man, he was reliable. He took care of his business. He covered others. He looks like he's found half a yard of pace. And I just love a story like that. I thought he was outstanding.
He also picked up his Salvadorian passport this week, so he'll be competing in Concacaf against Canada. We won't hold that against him. He was outstanding, and if that's the type of player that he can be for this group this season, then you have such much better depth at that center back position than you did a season ago. And you're going to need it with Mavinga out right now. I think that some fans forget how good Eric Zavaleta was in that 2017 MLS Cup winning season. And even over the course of 2018, I mean, he had a down year in 2019 when they started to maybe change their shape. His opportunities, they weren't always there, Terry. I think context, that might be the theme of the show in terms of the word that we're going to use. Context counts. And him coming to this camp hungry and ready to go and hitting the ground running, that could be something that can carry over as we move forward, across, into the MLS regular season.
I think sometimes when we analyze players' wheels, we look at the player specifically rather than how does he help the team? How does he make that defensive unit better? And I'd say a lot of what Zavaleta does is he makes good decisions. His spacing's great, and he makes that back line stronger.
Quickly before we move on, I want to give a shout out to Auro Jr. as well. Auro was boss. Angel Mena is an excellent player, the Ecuadorian down the right-hand side. And Auro at times had him in his back pocket. He was doing no-look passes. He got stuck in, was winning challenges. I just look at that back four, Larrea, Gonzalez, Zavaleta, Mavinga, and Auro. That is a top back four in Major League Soccer. Fingers crossed, injuries don't creep in, and we're going to deal with that next. But man, oh man, I think we saw a glimpse of how good Auro is and how good he can be moving forward as well.
Yeah, he had tons of drip, didn't he? Does that make sense?
Tons of drip. Yes.
I'm trying to
swag in his game, buddy. Swag in his game.
One thing's interesting when I watch Auro play. Do you ever see him red-faced, tired, panting? No, he plays on cruise control. And I think this is a testament to the decision-making. And his technique as well, but he's rarely caught out. Maybe once he goes for a ball he's not going to win, which leads to that chance where Campbell goes off the post. But he's got very few holes in his game. He's a wonderful defender. He can defend overloads. He's like a playmaker. He's like a central midfielder playing left back. And I think he just, with Schaffelberg in front of him, it just allows Schaffelberg to just play vertically. You've got Auro underneath you. You're going to have balance. If it's not on to go forward, you've got Auro that'll help you get to the other side. But just a real top footballer.
Lastly, before we get on to the negative, which clearly was the injuries, if I was to tell you end of November when Toronto FC's 2020 season was coming to an end, that in the first game of the 2021 season in the Concacaf Champions League against the Mexican champions, you would see these players play, you'd probably laugh at me. You'd probably be like, Wheeler, what have you been drinking this morning? Bono, Priso, Akello, Dorsey, Schaffelberg, Singh, Fraser, Gallardo, Zavaleta, all playing a significant role in that 1-1 draw. None of those players were regulars in Vanny's team last fall. It's pretty incredible to think how many players were, whether they were forced into that situation or not, ended up stepping in and playing a considerable role.
Think about the team spirit the next morning showing up at breakfast. Now, all of a sudden, 60% of your roster that hasn't played a ton is now part of it. That team breakfast is going to be buzzing. And, I'm excited for those guys. And they didn't let the club down. They all said to Chris, you know what, when you need me, I'm there. And this is what I'm going to bring.
Imagine if they had waffles as well. Waffles and buzzing from the night before. I love waffles.
There's never a waffle station, bro.
Oh, need to get that going. Come on. You're in Florida. It's the home of the waffle.
Oh, it's
isn't it called the Waffle House, the restaurant? No, down to the Waffle House. It's better than pancakes because they have the actual squares where the syrup sticks in.
Bro, I want to play on your team.
We'd have a good time. Probably not the fittest, Terry. So a 1-1 draw in Leon, but we mentioned it. It wasn't without loss. As two more players, I guess you can kind of add them to that list of walking wounded in Toronto FC's camp, as Josie Altidore and Erickson Gallardo both left the pitch prematurely. Gallardo only after coming on at halftime, leaving early as well. How much concern do you have in the current fitness levels of this Toronto FC team, just dealing with this many injuries this early in a season?
I'm an optimist. Having said that,
you are? Okay.
The guys were running on fumes, and probably one of the positives I can take subjectively watching the guys come off was they came off on their own accord and were able to stay on probably, I want to say 5 or 6 minutes longer than what we thought they would on the broadcast. And generally, that means generally sane. We need to see the results of the MRI. That the guys could be okay, and maybe it's just pure fatigue.
We know that Nick DeLeon was in Mexico, just wasn't quite ready to go. So we're assuming based upon those kinds of reports that he's close. We know that players like Moro and Akinola and late starts, they're on their way back as well. And we'll monitor other names as well. What does this mean to you? Because my only concern, if I'm going to, be a pessimist here, Terry, this early competition, you lose two more players. We see this across, football, whether it be South America, whether it be in Europe, in these cup competitions, it can take a lot out of your team. We remember the 2018 season played out for Toronto FC after succumbing to so many injuries during that demanding run to the Scotiabank Concacaf Champions League final. That at the very least has to be in the back of your head as reason for a little bit of concern that you exert so much into this competition to get things started that all of a sudden you might be playing catch up to a certain degree, trying to patch a team together come the start of the MLS season.
For sure. And that's a great point. It actually takes me back to 2012 where we played Santos Laguna in the semifinals, I believe we got to, and we didn't win in the league for 9. And like you said, 2018, we go to the finals of the Concacaf Champions League. And I think we won 4 and 18, I want to say. And I think that's one of the things that's difficult about MLS is juggling two competitions. And squads maybe aren't as deep as what they are in Liga MX. We saw Leon this weekend rotate 9 players and still win 3-1 against Atlas. And the other thing that's difficult is it's tough to, with the salary cap league, to bring players in, and with different transfer windows closing and opening, it becomes difficult to bring reinforcements in. Before the podcast, we were texting about Gold Cup, World Cup qualifiers as well. So there's a lot going on. It's just a busy schedule, and probably what scares me even more than that, which sounds tough, is when we have 3 games a week and playing this type of high intensity, high pressing football and heat with travel. It takes it out of you. And, whether it's physically and also mentally to perform like this for 3 games in a row when we're not the youngest team in the league, that could be difficult. That's kind of what was going through my head this week.
I just don't see the coach changing the way that they play. I think that just means that young players need to be ready, that they're going to get a real look this year that perhaps they weren't getting those looks under the previous manager, Terry. Like this is going to be the reality of the situation. Armas and his coaching staff have a clear idea of the way that they want to play. And I don't think that's going to be sacrificed based upon personnel.
For sure. And we spoke about it a bit on the broadcast too. And we've got 7 or 8 players that you reeled off that are injured, and it takes time. If you're used to training your body for 5 or 6 years a certain way, and it matches Greg's game model, the previous coach, and now all of a sudden it's lots of small-sided games, tons of short, high-intensity runs that are repeated. It takes time for your body to get used to this. And I think once the guys maybe get into more of a rhythm, hopefully their bodies will get used to it. But it's a big load asking guys over the age of 30 to play 3 times a week like this.
I still do, and we chatted about it last week. I still think that TFC could maybe use that one more center back in the team, one more fullback as well. But right now, based on the injuries, it's the attack, where the goal's going to come from. That's my biggest question. Big picture, that just puts a little bit more pressure to get a DP over the line, that you bring in that attacking player that can provide goals going forward. Because Josie Altidore's track record, as good as he has been, since he joined Toronto FC, this is his 14th injury that he sustained. He's missed over 400 days of football. So understanding that might be a player that needs to be managed a little bit. When Akinola comes back in, what's kind of that second season after he kind of burst on the scenes last season? What's that going to look like? I just look at that to be the position of priority right now. Toronto FC is going to need to score goals. And then right now they're short in that position.
You're saying 9 or center back?
I'm saying the player up top in attack. They need a player that can provide goals. And it might not just be a 9. It might be a player that can play out wide as well as a 9, can be a little bit of a hybrid, just a player that is a consistent goal threat in this team, because I think that is right now where Toronto FC short, especially with Pozuelo out of the team.
Yeah. I'm actually okay with the number 9 slot. Hopefully Josie's injury isn't too bad. His medical history doesn't lie. But I'd say, again, like last year almost, he started the season, there's tons of positives to draw from that appearance against Lyon. But then you've got Mullins up there as well. I think you know exactly what you're going to get from him. You've also got Parisa up there. I think he's flying under the radar a little bit, and he could make a difference at the MLS level, a real two-way number 9. And then you've also got Ayo Akinola, who's not too dissimilar from Bradley Wright Phillips, that he just lives on the last line. This system should suit him down to the ground. And, this might be the last year we have him if he has success. And then he's off to Europe. So that quartet of 4, plus you've got Russell Rowe, a young academy number 9 that's playing at Maryland, that's filling the net there. He could step in and do a job as well. So I'm okay at 9. I think Pozuelo, he'll be important for us when he comes back. And he's almost like our Navarro. He's our guy he's our maverick that can create something out of nothing. So I'll be excited for when he comes back, and he can kind of hide his work rate in that number 10 role and keep him fresh for those big moments. Osorio brings us some quality. I'd probably lean more towards what we're calling those wing attack roles, is maybe spending some money there.
Yeah, I don't know, Terry. I feel like last year the team was too reliant on Pozuelo to score goals. Yep. I just think that they need another reliable goal scorer in the team. And that's where the priority needs to be. Because honestly, I think they're good in the midfield. Priso, Akello, Bradley, Osorio, Delgado. Like, they're so deep if they're going to play in a 4-2-3-1 in those central roles. Maybe a little bit thin on the wing. We didn't see Jaden Nelson in the team last time out. Delgado got pushed forward, which was interesting because he can press a little bit higher up the field. I think you have enough pieces that can move in and out of those positions, but it's just that position up top. If Altidore's not fit, who's going to be the guy? Who's going to be the man in the team? You're right. It might be Akinola, but we're not sure when he's going to be ready to go either. So that's where your injuries really become an issue.
It's funny. You kind of brought me back to Ross County, a team up in Inverness I played for at the end of my career. And our manager was Jim McIntyre and Billy Dodds, a Rangers legend. And I remember like week 1 of him taking over, he put a flipboard up in the changing room, and he said, right, we were bottom of the league. We hadn't won in 7. And he said, we need I can't remember, 54 goals to stay in the league. Where are we going to get our goals from? And almost gave accountability to the team. And he said, right, our number nines, I think we played with 2 strikers. We need X amount of goals from you. From wide areas, we need X amount of goals. From midfield, we need X amount of goals. From set piece, you could go right through it. And he said, if we hit this number, and every week wherever we scored, he put a little tick mark beside that line or that number. And it was true. We scored, I think, an extra 2 goals, and the areas started to fill up nicely. But if you look at this starting team for TFC down at Lyon, there aren't a ton of goals in there. And I think when you look at analytics, and this is ABC of data, you need a certain amount of goals to come from your team, and where they're going to come from. I think these are fair questions to ask.
Well said. Good story. By the way, Ross County, interestingly enough, this season have 5 players named Ross on the team who play for Ross County. How insane is that? Do they have a Ross signing policy? They need to fill the Ross quota. Is that what their analytics department is telling them? And also a Canadian plays for that team, Harry Payton. Harry Payton from Kitchener, Ontario, should have been part of the Canadian under-23 team, but we'll leave Ross County alone for now. Let's look ahead to Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern time. Make sure you circle that, write it down. It's an early kickoff. Pre-match show begins on One Soccer. Well, I guess coverage begins at 5 p.m. With Petrillo, Platt, and KJ aboard coming your way at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. How do things change ahead of this second leg? Montez is in for Lyon. We're not sure who else will be in for Toronto FC. But like I said, getting that away goal puts the pressure on the quote-unquote away side in this match.
Yeah, and I'd say our overall performance down there, I wouldn't say we've scared them, but I'd say we've probably just frustrated Lyon a little bit. And, they've got to go out and score. And I think if we make it difficult for them, as simple as this might sound, and maybe take that half chance that comes our way, we could be in a fantastic spot going into the second half.
Yeah, you mentioned it in the 3-1 win on the weekend over Atlas Lyon. They didn't play Navarro. Davia was rested. Mena was rested. Menezes was rested, the 2 center backs, and the right back Ramirez as well. So clearly with eyes on Wednesday night. Interestingly, Joel Campbell played, the big Costa Rican striker who played all over the pitch. I wonder if he'll be on the outside looking in when it comes to the 11, though. I know he played a prominent role, but he was really kind of filling the boots, filling the role that Montez typically plays on this team. And wait till you see this player play, Toronto FC fans. He's unbelievable. He's like 34 years old. He looks like he's 24. He's awesome. So perhaps Campbell's the player that sacrificed and doesn't make it into that 11 come midweek.
Gigliotti, the Argentinian, he scored a couple. I'd imagine he comes in the side. I think Campbell will stay in the team.
Really?
But in Montez, I think you've got that true player maker, and maybe Campbell stays a little bit higher up the field. And I think just to deal with these types of players, TFC have to be a little bit stronger 1v1 and make sure that the Lyon attackers stay wide. We don't let them back into the pitch. And if we do, I think naturally our system's pretty narrow, that our weak side of the field just start to shift a little bit. I thought we were exposed a little bit on the weak side. Cover's also important as well. But I'm like you said, I'm as just a soccer fan, I'm excited to see Montez operate.
No kidding. What's frustrating, and this is going to be a recurring theme of the season, it sucks that this game's not being played at BMO Field. So it's a home field match, but not really. It is in terms of the stakes, the fact that the away goal meant something last week for Toronto FC. How can they make it their own, Terry? How difficult will it be kind of playing in a stale atmosphere? I mean, there was all kinds of atmosphere, with about 9,000 fans last week. It's going to be a lot different for the boys, won't it be? Yeah,
it'll be tough. I remember a couple of our, I was going to say European nights, but Concacaf nights. Our fans were awesome. When the team needed a little bit of a lift or it got difficult or the ball went out of play, you could hear the fans singing, and that's huge. And we're not going to have that. I think Michael Bradley said it before the last game, is if TFC can play a game that we want to play and we don't get drawn into an open, expansive Club Leon game. I think that that'll be important. And I think TFC, for having their first game under Chris Armas, will be better for it. There's some video they can look at the guys and improve. And I think there might be one or two opportunities as well, as once we set up our attack and maybe it's not on to go straight to goal, is to try to start moving around some of Leon's pieces. I think this is a moment of the game when they rest, when they're protecting their goal deep in their half. And I think gates will start to open and we can start to set up some of our rotations as well.
Perhaps we'll get some good news in terms of the fitness of the players, but we simply don't know. We expect Westberg will be back available. Will he play? I don't know. If Altidore is unable to go, expect Mullins to lead the line for Toronto FC, and perhaps Nick DeLeon's fit enough to come into the team to start ahead of Noble Okello just in behind. Other than that, I wouldn't change much. Would you, Terry?
No, I'd probably leave the back four. I think maybe I'd say Chris has a decision. Do you continue with young Ralph or do you bring Marky in beside Michael? I think that, I think Ralph did okay. I think he can be a little bit cleaner in possession. But if Chris Armas wants to trust that relationship of Ralph and Michael, I'd imagine he'll continue that way. I'd say Marky's the only player who's a little bit out of position. And Schaffelberg will be hopefully better for that first performance. I agree.
I'm still intrigued with Marky playing that position because he's not an out-and-out winger, but the defensive work and the ability to press up top, I thought he was good positionally that way, although you might lack a little bit from an attacking perspective. But in this game, if you come away with a 0-0, you're moving on to the next round of this competition.
Yeah, I think that's it's tough not to think that way. I think you've got to try to stay focused on the process and how you get there and almost chunk the game into a couple of blocks or 15-minute blocks throughout. But I for sure TFC aren't going to want to give a whole bunch away.
We'll see. Are you giving him a chance, Terry? What do you think? Wednesday night, what's going to happen?
I think that first 20 minutes is going to be important. And if we can come through that unscathed, we should be good. And there might even be an opportunity in there where Leon, they don't have a ton of balance and that TFC could maybe hurt them in transition.
I cannot wait to see Toronto FC play again. I mean, it was just like the appetizer last week, the main course coming up Wednesday night on One Soccer. Join us for that game. Before we go, it's also the start of the 26th season of Major League Soccer. Toronto FC taking on the Montreal Impact in sunny Florida. Well, they're not even the Impact anymore. They're CF Montreal. How many times will broadcasters do that over the course of the season? Put the coins in the swear jar every time you say Impact.
Let's just call them the Snowflakes.
Sure. Sure. You don't like the rebrand, Terry?
No, the Snowflakes. Come on. They're like a ski resort.
Yeah, exactly. 2 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday. You kind of touched on it. This Major League Soccer season, nothing's going to come easy at all. You're looking at the schedule. It's a 34-game schedule, 17 games at home, 17 away. Toronto FC only playing the Eastern Conference, all but one game because there's an imbalance still with 14 teams in the East, 13 teams in the West. They played the Colorado Rapids. It could have been worse. You could have got a tougher draw from the Western Conference. But it's not only the calendar. It's not only playing in Orlando. It's not only, not having a game at BMO Field on the schedule as of yet. Gold Cup coming up in June or July. World Cup qualifiers in June. There's a ton of other games where players can be drawn into. What does this mean for you? How difficult will this 2021 campaign be?
Ooh, going on last year, I think you've got to be ready to adapt. I don't think there'll be a playbook for this year. It looks as though there'll be a little bit more structure than last year. But I think trying to make life as easy as possible for the players away from the field, I think that's going to be a key. I think it'll be easy for guys to become frustrated, especially when it's not going well. I'm not sure on all the details of what families were able to come down to Florida, which ones didn't. I know it's tough with school, but that dynamic is going to be tough. And I think each player is different. Each player is dealing with a different situation. And I don't think you can have a blanket approach and go, okay, here's the plan, here's what we're doing, everyone should be good. I think you really need to know your players and what they're going through, and just try to make it as easy as possible from there, and then try to find that competitive edge. Let's not forget, this is professional sports, and playing away from home is so tough.
There's going to be a little bit of a club versus country tussle. The June window is wide open for Canada to play those all-important, potentially 4 World Cup qualifying matches. No players will be missing any club games based upon that. But if there are TFC players involved in the Canada World Cup side, there's a week off for an international break. But if you go deep in that competition, TFC players involved with country in the Gold Cup could miss 3 to 4 games. So something to keep in mind, and this is something that Canadian teams are pressed into a lot more because they rely on the Canadian talent from the MLS teams much more than the American talent that's spread out across the other 24 MLS teams. Just want to point out quickly, 3 new stadiums opening up across Major League Soccer: Cincinnati, Columbus, and we welcome Austin into the mix this coming season. Another great stop. Like, Nashville's number 1, Austin has to be number 2 for cool right now. And I think that Claudio Reyna has done a nice job building that team, and perhaps they can throw a surprise or two like Nashville did last year. Hopefully not at our expense. And obviously they're in a different conference, Terry, but there's a lot of excitement around the league this year. And what we hope as the league progresses and moves on, we have fans in stadium across this league, even here north of the border, obviously with a little bit more work to do at present time.
Yeah, it's so cool how it's almost like fans are just moving that threshold up to another level. And it was so cool over the weekend. Austin had a preseason friendly behind closed doors. Did you see it on social media?
Yeah,
they had almost 250 fans going nuts at the game behind a fence. So cool. But yeah, we'll see if we can get on that trip to Austin.
It's kind of like what our supporters do. Like, it's funny, like even Chris Armas brought it up to us last week. He and the players, a small group of players, were hanging out outside making noise when Toronto FC was training before they moved, down south of the border as well. It's difficult for the players. It's difficult for the fans. There's a natural connection there. And the sooner that we can bring it all together, the better for everyone involved. So it's a huge week for Toronto FC. Go ahead, Terry, before I wrap up.
Remember the game last year? TFC played Vancouver at BMO after MLS is back, and there was a couple hundred TFC fans going nuts at Exhibition Place. That was so cool.
I wanted to open up the doors and just let them in. We needed some atmosphere inside the building other than, outside the food building at the CNE. A huge week for Toronto FC. We hope that you're ready for it. We hope the boys are ready for it as well, as you have Club Leon Wednesday, 6 p.m., then rivalry match against CF Montreal Saturday afternoon, 2 p.m. You can watch the Wednesday game on One Soccer, the Saturday game on CTV and TSN. Thanks, Terry. Good stuff this week.
Thanks, brother.
We'll see you on Wednesday night. Thank you to our producer Erica as well. And thank you for tuning in. This has been episode 215 of Come On You Reds.